I was just a quiet intern, running errands and delivering coffee, when I noticed an elderly man standing alone in the center of our bustling office lobby. People walked past him, busy with their own schedules, without stopping to check if he needed help. The receptionist, Leela Summers, tried to assist, but it was clear she couldn't understand him. That's when I noticed the subtle movements of his hands and the tension on his face. He was signing, trying to communicate. My heart raced as I stepped forward and signed a simple "Hello, can I help you?" Relief spread across his face immediately. What I didn't realize was that from the balcony above, Henry Caldwell, the CEO of Nova Tech Solutions, was observing the entire scene. Before we dive further, think about this. Have you ever learned a skill just to help someone you care about? Perhaps it was cooking their favorite dish, fixing something at home, or even learning a new language. Share your story in the comments. Now, let me take you back to that morning that changed everything. My name is Sophia Blake, and when I joined Nova Tech Solutions, I was 23, carrying a mix of excitement and quiet apprehension. Officially, I was a junior marketing intern, but in practice, my days were filled with menial tasks, copying documents, restocking supplies, and delivering coffee to colleagues who barely noticed me. If there was a meeting, I sat silently in the back, taking notes or organizing handouts, never daring to speak. To most people at Nova Tech, I was almost invisible, useful in the background, but unnoticed. I hadn't always been this way. In high school, I was outgoing, active in theater, and full of energy. Teachers called me confident, bold, and lively, but years in college had chipped away at that confidence. Failed exams, rejected applications, and professors who subtly doubted my potential left me cautious and hesitant. By the time I graduated, I was no longer the spirited girl I had been. I was careful, quiet, afraid that speaking up would only highlight my shortcomings. Nova Tech was meant to be my fresh start, but it quickly reminded me of how small I felt. While my peers discussed campaigns with confidence, I avoided eye contact, crowded spaces, and even the break room where everyone seemed to belong. I preferred stairwells and quiet corners where I could blend into the background. "Sophia, can you handle these?" My supervisor, Clara Hayes, would ask, handing me piles of documents or pointing me toward disorganized storage closets. I always responded with a soft yes, grateful that the tasks required nothing more than quiet obedience. At home, though, my world was full of color because of my little brother, Ethan Blake. He was 7, born deaf, and possessed a resilience that amazed me every day. While our parents initially struggled to communicate with him, I made it my mission to connect. I devoted myself to learning British Sign Language, practicing late into the night, attending online courses, and joining community classes where I was often the youngest participant. One evening, while we sat together on the sofa, Ethan tapped my arm and signed, "I love you, Sophia." His small, determined hands made my throat tighten. I nearly cried, not just because of the words, but because of what they symbolized: trust, understanding, and a connection in a world that often ignored him. ASL became my proudest skill, my private source of power. But at Nova Tech, it felt useless. Surrounded by advertising and marketing professionals, my signing seemed like an elegant but irrelevant talent, like playing a violin in a room full of electric guitars. Occasionally, when no one watched, I'd practice under my desk, shaping letters in silence, telling myself it was personal, not professional. Yet part of me resented that something so meaningful could be dismissed. Leela Summers once caught me practicing. "Are you learning a new dance?" she teased. I smiled faintly and hid my hands, unwilling to explain. I didn't want pity or questions, but I thought of Ethan and the language that bonded us. Every day at Nova Tech was a careful balancing act. Complete tasks, remain unnoticed, avoid standing out. Every night, Ethan reminded me why I mattered. He'd rush to me after school, signing excitedly about his day. We laughed, shared secrets, and in those moments, I felt strong and important. Still, I never imagined a cell would matter in the corporate world. I believed Nova Tech would never value the silent power of communication the way Ethan and I did. I was wrong. One Tuesday morning, everything changed. The lobby of Nova Tech Solutions was alive with the usual rush. Phones ringing, footsteps echoing across marble floors, people carrying folders and laptops. I was at the front desk, preparing packets for a client meeting, ready to remain unnoticed, but then I saw him. An elderly man stood by the main entrance, tall and composed, wearing a dark gray suit. His silver hair was neatly styled, posture proud yet slightly strained. His lips moved silently, his hands gesturing in ways most people ignored. He was signing. Leela Summers looked flustered at the desk, attempting to help him. "I'm sorry, sir, I don't understand. Do you have an appointment?" She gestured to a notepad. The man shook his head, signing urgently. Leela glanced at the growing line behind him, then sighed, leaving him standing there, dignified but clearly frustrated. I froze. I was just an intern. My supervisor, Clara Hayes, had told me to focus on the meeting materials and not interfere with front desk duties. My instinct was to stay hidden, to pretend I hadn't seen anything. That would have been safer. That would have been the usual path for Sophia Blake, the quiet intern. But as I saw the man's shoulders slump and the sadness cloud his eyes, another face filled my mind. Ethan, my little brother. I thought about how often people overlooked him, how strangers ignored him as if his deafness made him invisible. The thought tightened in my chest until I couldn't stay still any longer. I walked toward the reception desk, palms slightly sweaty, heart pounding. The man turned to me, tired and cautious, bracing for yet another dismissal. I raised my hands and signed, "Hello, can I help you?" The change was immediate. His eyes widened in surprise, then softened with relief. A genuine smile spread across his face, the first I had seen since he stepped inside. His hands moved confidently, fluidly. "You sign, thank goodness." He signed. I nodded, steadying my own hands. "I'm so sorry you've been having trouble. How can I help you?" He exhaled, releasing the weight of frustration he'd been carrying. "I'm here to see my son. I don't have an appointment, but I hope to speak with the young woman at the desk." He gestured toward Leela Summers, who was now assisting another visitor. "She looked busy, of course. What's your son's name? Maybe I can help you reach him." I signed. He hesitated, then slowly spelled it out. "Henry Caldwell, Jr." My heart skipped a beat. Henry Caldwell, Jr., CEO of Nova Tech Solutions. His name topped the company directory. His corner office stretched across the top floor. His rare appearances in the lobby always caused a ripple of nervous energy among staff. And this man, this elegant, silver-haired stranger, was his father. "You're Mr. Caldwell's father?" I asked, trying to mask my surprise. He nodded. "Yes. I know he's busy, but I was nearby and thought perhaps I could see him for a few minutes." His expression softened with quiet longing. I felt a pang. This wasn't just a visitor. This was a father hoping to connect with his son, yet clearly feeling out of place in his own child's world. I thought of Ethan again, of how much it meant when someone chose to listen. Here I was, in front of a man who needed exactly that. "You're not a bother," I assured him. "Please have a seat while I make a few calls. Let's see what we can do." I guided him toward the lobby seating area, making sure he could see me so we could continue signing if needed. He nodded gratefully as he settled into the chair. As I picked up the phone at the desk, my pulse quickened. How could I arrange a meeting with the CEO himself? I was just an intern, with no authority or influence. Still, I dialed the extension for his executive office. A crisp voice answered, "Mr. Caldwell's office. This is Patricia Langley." Patricia, his executive assistant, was notorious for guarding access like a dragon protecting treasure. "Hi, Patricia. This is Sophia Blake from the Intern program. I have a visitor here who says he's Mr. Caldwell's father. He'd like to see him if possible." Silence stretched over the line. His father. Patricia repeated finally. Yes, ma'am. An elderly gentleman welled. Rest, he's been waiting here. Another pause. I'll need to check with Mr. Caldwell. Can you have the visitor wait? Of course, thank you. I hung up and returned to him. They're checking now. It might take a few minutes, but they know you're here. He smiled faintly. Thank you. I'm George Caldwell, by the way. I signed back. It's nice to meet you, George. I'm Sophia. We began to communicate through signing. He shared stories of his life as an architect, the buildings he designed across London, and the love he still carried for his late wife, who had been a teacher at the British School for the Deaf. He spoke proudly of raising Henry Jr., though a shadow crossed his face as he admitted they didn't see each other often anymore. He's always been driven. George signed. Even as a child, he wanted to prove himself, to show that having a deaf father didn't hold him back. I'm proud of him, but sometimes I worry he's forgotten how to just be. As he spoke, I noticed others glancing at us, some curious, some annoyed at a conversation conducted entirely in sign language in the middle of the lobby. I ignored them. For once, I wasn't invisible. I was a bridge, giving someone a voice when no one else would. Half an hour passed, then 40 minutes. My phone buzzed with messages from Clara Hayes reminding me to return to my assigned tasks. But every time I looked at George, his face lit up as he shared memories and stories. I couldn't walk away. Then I caught movement from the mezzanine. A tall figure, partially hidden behind a pillar, was watching us. My breath caught. It was Henry Caldwell, Jr., the CEO. His gaze stayed fixed on his father, on me signing, on the connection forming in plain view. My chest tightened. The intern who had abandoned her duties was now seen in a way I couldn't ignore. I had no idea what he was thinking or what this would mean for me. But one thing was certain. I was no longer invisible, and the consequences were coming. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Clara Hayes. Where are you? We need those packets now. I set it aside and looked at George, sitting with quiet dignity, careful not to be a bother. Would you like to walk while we wait? I signed, expecting a polite refusal. His face brightened. I'd love to. I've never seen where Henry works. I offered my arm and led him past the reception area, where Leela Summers juggled calls, into the heart of Novatech Solutions. We started in the creative department, a maze of monitors and whiteboards. I introduced George, and a designer swiveled. What do you think of this grid? She asked. Grids are scaffolds. George signed with a smile. They disappear when the balance is right. As we moved, he told me about more of his work. I left a few lines on this city's skyline, he signed, but my favorite work was the small stuff. Libraries, clinics, spaces where light matters. My wife believed rooms should listen to the people in them. I whispered, then signed, She sounds extraordinary. After she passed, it was just Henry and me. He is hearing. As he grew older, he kept his worries from me to prove he could carry everything. On the account management floor, phones rang and dashboards blinked. I explained their role. George signed. Every craft needs translators, people who turn vision into agreements. In architecture, we call them project managers. A team member paused, offering a quiet, "Welcome, sir." I signed the greeting. In my day, the loudest person wasn't always in charge. The best listener was. George signed. My phone buzzed again. Where are you? Answer me. I ignored it. We stopped at a wall of past campaigns, framed successes and failures. George peered at an advertisement and signed. She said the city sings if you learn its language. She believed in doors that open both ways. Accessibility is a door. So is respect. I thought of Ethan, of nights his hands told me stories no voice could carry. A creative director intercepted us. Your son is presenting to the board this afternoon. I translated. Pride and worry braided together in George's eyes. My phone buzzed yet again. I silenced it without looking. The choice was made. Whatever the fallout, I could live with it if George left feeling welcome. Shall we head back to the lobby if you're tired? I offered. No. He signed, standing taller. I want to understand this world. his world. Twice I glanced at the mezzanine. Twice I saw the same steady silhouette, Henry Caldwell, Jr., observing quietly. George rested his hands on the railing and signed. I built all this, I'm proud, I only wish. He paused, searching for words. No language made it easy. I signed back. He still needs you, even if he forgets to show it. George looked at me, surprise melting into gratitude. Thank you for seeing me today. George signed. Sometimes that's the hardest thing, to be truly seen. I nodded, acutely aware of how visible I had become. The intern who had abandoned her assigned duties to guide the CEO father through a place that hadn't made room for him. A final buzz rattled my pocket. I let it die there. When I raised my eyes to the mezzanine, Henry Caldwell, Jr. stepped out of the shadows into the light, gaze fixed on us, decision written clearly on his face, and he started heading our way. Back in the lobby, I knew the grace period was over. My phone was filled with messages from Clara Hayes, and her expression said the last one had been a warning. She approached quickly, footsteps echoing. Sophia, you abandoned your tasks, ignored messages, and left your team short-handed. Explain yourself now. I opened my mouth, but George shifted uneasily beside me. Before I could respond, another voice cut in, calm and authoritative. Actually, Clara, I need to speak with Ms. Blake first. Silence fell. Henry Jr. emerged from the elevator bank, composed, direct. He looked at me, then at his father, something gentler softening his features. She was helping my father, he said. Clara faltered. He lifted a hand, firm but not harsh. Thank you, Clara. I'll handle this. Leela Summers froze mid-keystroke. A few employees drifted closer, curious. Everyone in the lobby was watching. Henry turned fully to George, drew a steadying breath, and raised his hands. The first signs were tentative but deliberate. I'm sorry I kept you waiting, he said aloud, signing as well. I didn't know you were here until I saw you with Sophia. I've been watching for a while. George's face lit up, astonishment shifting to joy. You've been learning to sign, he signed. Henry nodded, hands steadying. I should have done this years ago. I should have met you in your language, not asked you to live only in mine. Emotion rippled across the lobby. A creative director blinked back tears. Someone in accounting pressed a fist to her mouth. Clara's shoulders dropped slightly. Leela exhaled. George stepped forward. The distance between father and son, measured in years of silence, collapsed. He reached out, and Henry met him halfway. Their embrace was firm and quiet, speaking more than words ever could. For a moment no one clapped, then soft hands began, respectful and gentle. I stood there, feeling simultaneously invisible and impossibly visible. All I had done was say hello, and somehow a door had opened. They separated. George signed, I'm proud of you. Henry smiled, relief and regret intertwined. I'm proud of you, too. I'm sorry it took me so long. Then his attention returned to me. Ms. Blake, he said, authority tempered with warmth. Would you come with me to my office? There are things we need to discuss. My stomach sank. Yes, sir. I glanced at George. He gave a small nod, encouragement and blessing in one. Clara found her voice. Mr. Caldwell, the deck for this afternoon. I'll handle it. Henry said gently, eyes still on me, gesturing toward the executive elevator. We walked as a small procession, Henry ahead, me beside him, George a step behind, the lobby returning to motion in our wake. The elevator chimed. Reflected in the glass walls were three faces, my anxious one, George's quiet pride, and Henry's composed focus. For a long moment no one spoke. The weight of the lobby still lingered in my chest. Ms. Blake, Henry said finally, what you did today was right, even if it wasn't on the task list. You revealed a gap here I can't ignore. I swallowed. Sir, he raised a hand gently. You don't need to justify anything. It wasn't a mistake. It was the most meaningful thing anyone here has done all week, maybe longer. He turned to George. Dad, I've watched you visit this building for years. Each time, I let others treat you like a disruption. I let it become normal. George met his gaze, something unspoken passed between them. Henry looked at me again. Today that changed. I watched a junior intern, not someone in leadership, drop everything to make sure my father was seen, heard, and respected. And I realized something. We talk about inclusion in mission statements during orientation, but we haven't truly lived it. You did. I felt my cheeks warm. Yes, your instincts were right. That's why I want to offer you a permanent position. I blinked. A position? Yes, I'm creating a new department, accessibility and inclusion. You'd be its first director, reporting directly to me. Your role would include evaluating policies, training staff, introducing accessibility protocols, and ensuring employees, clients, and visitors with disabilities are fully included. My breath caught. Director, sir, I'm just an intern. I haven't finished my last semester. I have no experience managing departments or developing policies. You don't need that, he said. You have something more valuable, empathy. You see people not as inconveniences, but as humans who matter, and you have a skill, fluency in British Sign Language, and understanding of lived experiences most here don't even recognize. George reached over, touching my arm. You changed everything today, he signed. I swallowed hard. I don't know what to say. Think about it, Henry said. Take the weekend. Talk to your family, your brother. I will, I whispered. I'll have HR send you the draft offer this afternoon. If you accept, transition planning begins Monday. As we walked back to the elevator, Henry placed a hand on his father's shoulder. Lunch on Friday. He asked aloud, signing as well. I wouldn't miss it. George signed with a grin. 6 months later, Sophia Blake, now Director of Accessibility and Inclusion, had transformed Novatech Solutions. She audited every department, identifying physical and digital barriers. Visual alarm systems replaced auditory, only ones. ASL interpreters were present at all major meetings. Captioning was implemented for all videos and materials. Some resisted, whispering about too much change, but Sophia persisted. Her turning point came when Clara Hayes, once her supervisor, was caught practicing ASL in the break room. I figured it was time I stopped pretending I knew everything, Clara said. Sophia signed back, thank you. Optional ASL lunch sessions began. HR incorporated inclusion into onboarding, and a culture of accessibility became part of everyday life. Marketing campaigns, websites, and client communications reflected inclusion in both content and representation. Employees signed greetings at coffee stations. Flashing alarms were installed alongside audio ones. Universal design standards were adopted company-wide. Empathy became Novatech's true currency. Every Thursday, George visited around 11:45 a.m., no longer just the old man who doesn't speak, but a father remembered by name. Henry Jr. signed fluently, laughter echoing across the executive dining room. Ethan, my little brother, became a familiar face at Novatech during school breaks. His confidence grew with every visit, encouraged by the culture Sophia helped build. Sophia often thought back to that day in the lobby, the day everything changed because she chose to step forward. She hadn't set out to be a hero, but in a way, she had become one. A hero not of capes or battles, but of creating space for others to be seen, to be heard, and to belong. As the story closes, consider this. Have you ever seen someone overlooked until one person chose to act? Can small actions truly change lives?